and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice President Beeler. Welcome, everyone, to tonight's meeting of the Penn-Harris-Madison Board of School Trustees. I want to take a moment and welcome all of the folks who have assembled here in the boardroom. I think we even have some students, which is wonderful to see. We also want to extend a welcome to those who are gathered outside the boardroom here at the ESC, as well as a very special welcome to those who are participating via our video live feed. We appreciate everybody's interest in participating tonight at our board meeting, and we're delighted to have you. With that, we'll call the meeting to order. It is 7:02 p.m. First thing that we need to do, because we do have some board members participating virtually, is we'll take a roll call. When I say the name of the board member, please indicate your presence by saying, "Here, Mr. Beeler."
Present.
Mr. Garrett.
Present.
Mrs. Gates.
Here.
Mr. Woods.
Present.
Ms. Roach.
Here.
And I too am present. The first item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Board members, do you have any additions or changes to the agenda for tonight's meeting? Hearing none, is the administration.
The administration has no changes.
Then do I have a motion to approve the agenda for the Monday, January 25th, 2021 regular board meeting as presented?
I so move.
Second.
Mr. Beeler, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Garrett?
Aye.
Ms. Roach?
Aye.
Mr. Woods?
Aye.
I too vote aye. Motion carries unanimously by a vote of 6-0. Next up is approval of the minutes from the January 11, 2021 executive session and regular board meeting. Board members, do you have any changes to those minutes? Hearing none, does the administration?
The administration has no changes.
Then do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the January 11, 2021 executive session and regular board meeting as presented?
So moved.
I so move.
I recognize Mrs. Gates with the motion, and Mr. Beeler with the second. Mr. Beeler, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Garrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Roach, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Woods, how do you vote?
Aye.
I too vote aye. That motion carries by a vote of 6-0. Move on to the fun stuff. The superintendent's recognitions and announcements. Dr. Thacker.
Thank you, President Riley and Board of Trustees. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see you. And I'm especially excited to say we have back for our meeting, our outstanding student ambassador from Penn High School. So welcome, Manal. Luch, it's all yours, Manal.
Thank you. Good evening, President Riley, members of the board, Dr. Thacker. This evening, as always, I'm going to be sharing some athletic and academic highlights and an exciting new project that we have for Kingsman Court coming up. So in athletic news, our girls wrestling team placed second at their state tournament. Overall, the wrestling team won their NIC crown, and they won 9 of 14 individual championships. Our girls swim team also won their NIC championship, placing first in 5 events. Alyssa Messenger and Lily Christensen set NIC records that weekend. In exciting faculty news, our English teacher, cross-country, and debate coach, Jeremy Starkweather, was recently named Homes for Heroes Teacher of the Month. And Miss Crystal Ryan was also recently recognized as Arts Educator of the Decade. So that's very exciting for our faculty. And recently we had 20 Penn students selected to participate in the 2021 Indiana All-State Band. And those 20 were selected from a pool of 500 candidates. Lastly, in Kingsman Court news, we have an exciting project we're starting up next month. We're partnering with the Muslim Student Association as a replacement collaborative project. It'll be replacing our Interfaith Dialogue event that was supposed to happen last year, which was unfortunately canceled due to COVID. But we're going to be partnering with a local restaurant for a give back opportunity. Basically, what that means is a percentage of that restaurant's sales of a certain date will be donated to St. Joseph's County's United Way COVID Relief Fund. and that's going to be through Kingsman Court. And excitingly, United Way has agreed to underwrite all administrative costs, which basically means that 100% of the proceedings that we accumulate from those 2 days will be going to community needs and community needs only. That's all I have for you guys tonight. Thank you, as always, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you, Val. As always, we appreciate the updates that you provide. Also appreciate your participation here in our board meetings. You have a great night.
Mr. Riley, I do have a question for our student ambassador. If we wanted to participate financially in assisting with the drive, your fundraising event, how can we do that as a board?
Well, I have to say everything's very tentative right now. I'm reaching out to, I believe our top two options that came up from our representatives were Chipotle and Panera. Hopefully you guys all love Chipotle or Panera, whichever one you end up.
We've heard of them.
But basically on the date, we'll send out the information. If we have a board meeting before then, I'll make sure to make an announcement, a little shameless plug. But on that date, we're going to be getting anybody and everybody that we can to go and buy food. The more people that we buy food, the higher percentage that ends up going to United Way. So I will be, once we have all of the details, I can send all of that information to Mr. Gallagher, and that can be spread to all of the students and the teachers through their weekly scoop. And I can forward it to the board as well. We'd really, really appreciate any of you buying food or anything that day, because it would really help the COVID Relief Fund out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Mel. Thank you for the question, Mr. Woods. We'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is Superintendent Spotlight.
Dr. Thacker. Thank you, President Riley and Board of Trustees. This evening, PHM Technology highlights a new software tool implemented this year to help the hybrid learning environment. Pear Deck is an add-on for Google Slides that allows teachers to better engage students with formative assessments and interactive questions right from their slide presentations. Let's take a look.
Pear Deck is a way to take Google Slides and turn them into an interactive feature that you can use with your students so that students can actually participate with those slides.
You're able to curate information and then share it out with students. You have total control of their screens when they have those slides open, so you're able to pause their screen and redirect their attention.
In terms of teaching a foreign language, it can be scary for my students to then want to share their answers out loud with their classmates sometimes. I can pull up as they're typing their answers in live time. I can see them backspacing and fixing things. I can say, oh, hey, watch that spelling here, and then they quickly change it.
So Pear Deck allows me to keep my students socially distanced. I'm able to stay in the front of the room and they're able to remain at their seats. The information that they provide on their Chromebooks immediately is sent to me on my desktop.
Last school year, there was a lot of sadness, and I had one Pear Deck activity, but I just said, draw a picture of yourself waving to me. The very first slide, they had cute little self-portraits, all with a little waving hand and maybe a hi, Mrs. Bellata. And as I just scrolled through those one after the other, I just felt connected to them. It was sweet and it was fun.
It has a really nice SEL component, and students are just asked to rate how they're feeling. And then as I'm looking at student information, I can see their little smiley face. And then it kind of shades how I respond to those students. So if I see that they have a frowny face, I know to kind of tread lightly and find other ways to support them because there might be something going on that I'm not totally aware of.
At the end of the semester, I give a course evaluation survey, what's working, what's not working, how can I better help you? And several students said they really enjoy using Pear Deck, that they felt like they gained a lot from using it and seeing other people's responses, and that they wanted to use more of that.
Our creative teachers keep getting better.
That's great.
Better and better. So, So thank you. And as we move forward, the administration recommends approval of the 6 items appearing on the consent agenda. Appearing on the personnel report under classified staff is the retirement of Sherry Oswald, bus operator, who retired January 15th this year after 13 years of service. So on behalf of the board administration, we wish Sherry the very best in her retirement.
Thank you, Dr. Thacker. Board members, do you have any questions regarding tonight's consent agenda? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the January 25, 2021 consent agenda as presented by Dr. Thacker?
So moved.
A second.
Mr. Beeler, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Garrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Roach, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Woods, how do you vote?
Aye.
I too vote aye. Motion carries by a vote of 6-0. We'll move on to our instruction report items for the evening. Dr. Thacker.
Okay, thank you, President Riley. We have tonight with us a second report from the Academy of Penn High School. We have a very, very talented leader in Glenn Northern. In fact, he was the Indiana Teacher of the Year for music not long ago. So Mr. Northern is here and he's going to make a presentation, but he's going to be actually formally introduced by Assistant Superintendent Dr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Dr. Thacker. Good evening, members of the board. It is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Glenn Northern tonight. He will be sharing with you a very fun update and some of the really creative things that the Fine Arts and Communications Academy has been able to accomplish even in this very trying environment. So welcome, Mr. Northern.
Thank you. President Riley, members of the board, Dr. Thacker, Dr. Shorlinski, thanks for inviting me to be here tonight. Since I saw you last, we've been through quite a lot in 10 months. And I want to talk to you about what we've done to try to keep students engaged and how we've adapted and pivoted our learning for the benefit of our students. I'll give you a short list of some of the events. These were events that were canceled from this last spring, things that would have happened live, in some cases happened virtually, and in most cases didn't happen at all. So our students certainly lost a lot of experiences last year, and especially it's very challenging for our seniors last year. So what did we do? Our staff did an outstanding job of reaching out to students and keeping them engaged and connected, especially in the quick nature that we had to adjust our learning. And I feel like our staff did a wonderful job. I think our staff overall did a wonderful job. Our fine art teachers were exceptional at this. One of the things that was really fun about our spring was our theater students presented their spring play, their children's play, Peter Pan. They actually presented it as a virtual production. And that was under the direction of theater teacher Crystal Bryant. Here's some events that were canceled for this year, including some things that will become virtual experiences rather than live experiences, but many of our concerts, performances, and travel plans have been suspended or canceled. So what did we do this year? I feel like our staff came back in August with a very solid plan to engage our students in distance learning. And our staff has been fantastic at checking in on students about their physical and emotional well-being, as well as continuing to engage students who maybe have been less responsive through the fall semester. Our theater students, under the direction of Crystal Ryan and CPA, our Center for Performing Arts Director, Nick Sikorsky, have created a student podcast that launched, and that included a radio play that our theater students did this fall. And then in December, our choirs were able to record their holiday concerts and make those available to families. Our visual art teachers have worked really, really hard to keep their students engaged, to find different ways and different mediums to create art at home. And in doing so, our students have been recognized with 52 visual arts scholastic art awards. And that's a number that's a little low for a normal year, but considering the fact that we've had about 10 weeks of live instruction in the last 10 months, again, I feel like our staff has done a great job, and our students have really responded to. That's the thing we're most proud of. So far this year, our band, choir, and orchestra students are currently working on their solo and ensemble submissions, which are going to be virtual submissions. This is one of the few things that's sort of almost close to being what it would be in real time Our students are going to virtually record themselves and submit those for evaluation to the State School Music Association within the next few weeks. 27 band members recently submitted auditions for the Indiana All-State Bands. And since I created this presentation for you last week, we've learned that 20 of those students were accepted, which represents the second highest number of students from any single school in the state of Indiana for this year. Our bands are also planning concerts this week, our socially distanced concerts, which will have no audience, but we'll be recording our performances this week on Wednesday and Thursday evening to share with our families. And then our theater students and our music students are collaborating on a socially distanced musical entitled The Theory of Relativity, and that will perform in early March. And then the last statement here, we were waiting to find out about our ISMA Spring Festivals. We have since learned, since this presentation was submitted, that those will be a virtual submission. So we will have an opportunity to perform for evaluation, but there'll be no state concert finals, which our orchestras and bands are typically a part of. Since I saw you last year, the 2020 All-State Band list was issued, and we had 15 students make the All-State Band last year. Last year, the All-State Bands were one of the first events that got postponed early in March. They usually is hosted at Purdue, and Purdue was one of the first places to begin shutting themselves down, and we were not able to have that event there. This is, I think, the 9th year that we, PHM, has been recognized by the National Association of Music Merchants as one of their best communities for music education. And the NAM Association evaluates a school corporation by its support in terms of resources, staffing, and instruction time. And those are the parameters that they evaluate when they're picking the best communities for music education. Dr. Thacker and I joked about this because of one of the first years we were selected, there were about 150 schools, school corporations nationwide that were part of this. And since then, the number's grown to 754. So the list gets bigger. The list from schools in Indiana does not get that much larger. There's about 14 schools that were part of this honor last year. And I do think it shows what music education and a commitment to music education is around the country, which is growing. But of course, here it's always been important to us, and we've always valued that. In closing, I would just add that a fine arts education encourages creativity, collaboration, organization, and problem-solving skills, which we know are skills, life skills that our employers in the area want our students to have. And essentially, a fine arts education kind of rewires a student's brain and how they learn, and that kind of benefits everything they do. Student engagement is higher, and student attendance is higher. So I appreciate everything that this board does and the administration does to support all of our fine arts students in all the things they do. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Well, we certainly appreciate you too. Board members, do you have any questions or comments for Mr. Northern?
I just have a quick comment. 3 of my 4 children are served by the music program here at PHM. And I really, from the bottom of my heart, want to thank all of these educators, because one of the few silver linings for me as a parent of kids under these conditions is the joy of listening to them play. And I get to hear them all day long, as a matter of fact. And it's been such a source of well-being in their lives. And I know these teachers have had to reinvent the wheel. And so I think I can safely speak on behalf of a ton of parents in this district. Thank you, and keep up this great work.
Thank you. We know a lot of our students are struggling, and it's really a great feeling to be able to give them something kind of normal.
Board members, any other questions or comments? Mr. Northern, you are always a sight for sore eyes. It is wonderful to see you again. It's crazy that it's already been a year since we last got to enjoy each other's company. But from the bottom of my heart too, and on behalf of the board, thank you so very deeply for everything that you're doing, and for you and for your educator team. We appreciate you so much. You're keeping the arts in PHM vibrant. 27 band members being accepted to the Indiana All-State band. I mean, that's incredible, along with the recognition from NAM. And you know, one thing that you said that I thought was most poignant was the fact that despite everything that you're doing already, that you have made it an emphasis to check on the physical and emotional well-being of our band students, our musicians, and our art students. Thank you so very much.
Thank
Come
you.
back when
Thank you. And I think all of our teachers are doing that. It's not as easy as it usually would be. And it's a bigger deal right now, of course, than ever.
you're doing a wonderful job. Come back when you can stay longer.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Move on to our second instruction report, Dr. Thacker.
Thank you, President Riley, Board of Trustees. The next one is very, very near and dear to me, and it should be to all of us. The Superintendent's Advisory Council focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion was implemented in this school year. And so you're going to hear from our Director of Social Emotional Learning, Dr. Jennifer Sears, and Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Mr. Derek White, give an update on some things that we're doing in regard to addressing inequities, equality, and eliminating discrimination, making sure that we can make a difference. One of our major goals, all of you know, we have a vision of excellence, and one of our major goals is valuing and celebrating diversity. So we're putting more things in place to ensure that this happens. And these are two relatively new positions in the last couple of years. Dr. Sears has taken over, and last year when we closed out in March, she was really spearheading all of the professional development initiative regarding social emotional learning. We're able to in-service our entire classified personnel instead of laying people off. And when we were doing those things, we're looking at the diversity, incorporating diversity. Those two things work together so much, social emotional learning and diversity. These two are just fantastic. Derek White is a fantastic leader. I'm so delighted to have both of them on the team and leading us. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Dr. Sears and Mr. White.
President Riley, Dr. Thacker, and members of the board, it's my honor to present to you tonight a mid-year update on the Superintendent's Advisory Council. So far this year, we've met 4 times, and we have 3 meetings remaining. So tonight, we'll talk about how the Superintendent's Advisory Council supports the resolution as well as the district's major goals. And then we'll talk about the purpose of the SAC, logistics for creating the SAC, who is on it, topics covered so far, next steps, and what we have learned thus far. As you are aware, in light of the social unrest that occurred over the summer, an alumni group wrote an open letter urging PHM to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And you all, our amazing board, made a resolution to work to end racism and remediate racial inequalities to help foster safe, equitable, and inclusive environments, which is really amazing that our board made that step to do that. And so you created this resolution, and really the language that recognizes that working with the school community is vital and necessary component of achieving the goals expressed in the resolution is really where I feel like the Superintendent's Advisory Council comes into play. So I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to every one of you for making a resolution. And I'm just incredibly honored to be able to be a part of this work and partner with amazing individuals in our community to help bring about positive change that will hopefully impact our community for really forever. The SAC also supports Dr. Thacker's 6 major goals for our district. And as we work with community members, parents, students, teachers, counselors, and administrators on the SAC, we can focus on ways to further value and celebrate diversity. And then we can be really intentional about building positive relationships, developing solutions, and actionable items to work toward eradicating social injustices and discrimination, which helps us foster these psychologically safe environments that are so important, where students feel like they belong and are included. And this leads to action items within our district, as well as professional development for staff growth, and then it spurs on academic success for student growth as well. So taking the resolution, the district's goals.
Hi,
And
I'm Sean Galler. I'm the principal at Penn High School.
Taking into consideration the district's goals and understanding the incredible impact that this can have for our students, we set our why, our purpose for the SAC, which is really to have this district focus on the goals of valuing and celebrating diversity and working toward eliminating racial injustices and discrimination. And since we have a district focus, we have a couple video clips from some of our Superintendent Advisory Council members, just to bring some different perspective into the presentation tonight. So to start, we'll have Mr. Sean Gallagher, who is the principal at Penn High School, talk about our purpose ROI for the SAC.
Hi, my name is Sean Gallagher. I'm the principal at Penn High School. The main purpose of the Superintendent's Advisory Council, focusing on diversity, equity, inclusion, is to bring multiple stakeholders together around a school district's goal of valuing and celebrating diversity, but also working towards eliminating racial injustices and discrimination. This is important work for all schools to have. This committee has brought great value to me as a building principal, specifically at the high school level. Because this is a district focus, it has allowed us to create momentum for my team so that we can thoughtfully navigate these challenging conversations and professional development at the building level. When the entire school district has a common vision, mission, and goals related to valuing and celebrating diversity, synergy is created, which allows for this important work to be accomplished.
So as we went about creating the SAC for this year, we really had a framework already in place because we had a Superintendent's Advisory Council last year that focused on social emotional learning, restorative practices, and safety. And so we were able to use that framework and then build from that as we focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion this year. So we used the similar approach that we had last year to spread the word and try to recruit members for our Superintendent's Advisory Council from our community and for parents. And we had an application process and really worked with principals to help nominate teachers and counselors and students to be a part of this as well. So when we look at who our stakeholders are, here's a list of everybody on the Superintendent's Advisory Council. And I truly feel as though we have incredible members on our Superintendent's Advisory Council. And they really bring a lot of insight and passion to the table about this topic. And it really starts at the top. It starts with the resolution that you all made for this work to happen. And then our leadership from Dr. Thacker and Mr. Linsky as well as we move forward with this initiative. And then it's been an honor to work with Mr. White, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, as we prepare and plan for these meetings. So we have parents, we have community members, we have these wonderful students who, when they speak, you can hear a pin drop, because what they bring to the table is so important. We have central office administrators, building administrators, the secondary and elementary representatives, teachers, our association president, counselors, and then, as I mentioned, Mr. White as well. And so Mr. Michael Patton is the Diversity and Inclusion Officer for the City of South Bend. He was on our SAC last year and also a member this year, and he's been an integral member and has co-presented with Mr. White at one of our Superintendent's Advisory Council meetings. And so we have a clip here just showing his enthusiasm for the Superintendent's Advisory Council.
My name is Michael Patton. I am the Diversity and Inclusion Officer for the City of South Bend and a part of the Superintendent's Advisory Council. I am also a proud parent of a Penn High School student. I would like to commend Dr. Jerry Thacker for his foresight in developing the tools to celebrate diversity and fight against racial injustices and discrimination throughout the Penn-Harris-Madison School District. I believe this will create equitable success for all students for the corporation. Go PHM.
So once we had our Superintendent's
My name is Michael.
Council, we'll hear from him again, but we'll wait. We really started our first meeting as kind of an organizational meeting where we wanted to lay the groundwork, have discussion about why diversity, equity, and inclusion is important for a school district to focus on. And so we looked at it through the lens of social emotional learning and started using a technique for restorative practices and made agreements so we could create and foster the psychologically safe environment. And then we also had members We had kind of a definition walk, if you will, go around and put what they feel is most important with these areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we built our own definition. So we had a common ground and common language to build from. And so these are the definitions from our own SAC, and we use that in addition to the agreements as well as the resolution to have a central focus, and that's shown every single time we meet so that we stay focused on our goals. So we have had 4 meetings, as I mentioned so far, and the first meeting was held September 14th, and it was just really general and organizational. As I mentioned, we had a lot of discussion and asked members what they felt was important for us to focus on. And so that helped build our agenda for future meetings, as well as information from the open letter and what was in the literature to be important to cover. So our second meeting was held October 5th. And Mr. White and Mr. Patton talked about implicit biases and then how to de-bias. And that was an important first step for a lot of us to really look at what biases we might hold and just to be self-aware moving forward. And then we also had our third meeting October 16th, and we talked about the importance of sharing stories. And that helps us value and celebrate differences and diversity amongst our staff and our students. Our last meeting that we had was held December 7th, and we talked about discipline practices where we looked at data and then discipline practices that are in place, including restorative practices. So as we create the agenda for these meetings, I work very closely with Dr. Thacker, and his leadership and vision for the Superintendent's Advisory Council has been so helpful as we guide. And I also work closely with Mr. Linsky and Mr. White, and we work together with our Superintendent's Advisory Council and really try to leverage the genius within our group. So as I mentioned, Mr. Patton co-presented. We also had our restorative practice trainers, Mr. Williams, Dr. Dino, and Mr. Seth Mulner present. And then Dr. Snyder and Mr. Lerman have been integral in preparing for our upcoming meeting that will be in February as we talk about hiring and recruiting diverse staff. So we have 3 meetings left, and we'll talk about hiring, recruiting diverse staff, as well as instructional practices, identification for honors, high ability, ACP, AP courses, and then we will also just have the goals of the SAC was to have action items. And so at our last meeting, we will talk about the action items that come out of the Superintendent's Advisory Council. And that really comes from the subcommittee work. So at every meeting, we have kind of a general overview of the topic, and then we have time for every SAC member to provide feedback if they want on the topic. And then starting in December, we split everybody up into subcommittees so that we can really dig into developing these action items so we can have transformative changes within our district. And then, so we'll have those to share with you at the end of the year once we have our last update. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Derek White, our amazing Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer.
Dr. Sears, before you go,
Yes.
just a quick question.
Yes.
Do you expect to have that by the end of the academic year or the end of the calendar year for the board to look at?
That's a great question. So by the end of the academic year on May 3rd is our last meeting. So we expect to have that those in place. And we've already had some really great feedback already that we've been able to put some changes into place.
Thank you, Dr. Sears.
Thank you, Dr. Sayers. Student voice speaks volume and is vital to our SAC and PHM success now and moving forward. At this time, Winona Booch, student ambassador to the school board and a member of Dr. Thacker's Superintendent Advisory Council, will share her voice in this video clip on why it's important for the SAC to achieve action items that Dr. Sayers just discussed for all students at PHM.
Hi, my name is Winona Butch. I am a junior at Penn High School, and I am a member of the Superintendent's Advisory Council. This summer, I spent an unfortunate amount of time reading through student testimonials of their distressing experiences at Penn High School. I commend our administration for acknowledging these issues, but discussions have limited resolutionary impact. and that is why I believe the council is of such great importance. I am proud to be pursuing actionable change, and I am certain that the council, with our equality pursuing purpose made clear, will not stop until these academic and social inequities are resolved. The safety and comfort of my peers holds my and the rest of the council's attention, and for that I am grateful.
What have we learned this far of best practices? The Superintendent Advisory Council represents a wide range of stakeholders. It starts with the leadership of the superintendent. We have central office personnel, Mr. Linsky and Dr. Short, who are vital members of the Superintendent Advisory Committee, along with parents, students, building administrators at the high school level, all three of the middle school principals, as well as two elementary schools that I work weekly with, Meadows Edge, Mr. Gardner, as well as the principal at Walt Disney, Mr. Tyler. They're very instrumental in all the work that we do. Transparency is critical. One thing that Dr. Thacker, in all the meetings that we have, he understands the importance of telling the story, but also making sure that the truth is at the center of that story. And I commend him for that. It's all about having an open dialogue, because when you have open dialogue, that's when you can build trust. That's when you can communicate openly. And these are some difficult conversations that we are having and that we'll continue to have. And it really starts with that open dialogue. The range of SAC topics, it really starts with that open letter that the students, a group of Penn alumni, wrote, as well as the diversity equity job description is embedded in everything that we do. So when we look at these topics that Dr. Sears just discussed, this is my job description. This is the work that the open letter basically said that we need the assistance of adults to make sure that every student has a voice, and every student is heard, and every student has value, and every student is comfortable in their skin, no matter what school that they attend in PHL. The action items are folded within the initiatives. So again, by the end of the academic year, hopefully we will be able to present to you our findings. Leadership starts at the top. John Maxwell again stated that so eloquently, that everything that we do is because of the leadership of the school board, as well as Dr. Thacker. And when I came here several years ago, I spent most of my time at a neighboring school corporation. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt, the work that we have done in terms of SEL and diversity and equity has been tremendous. More than what I experienced as a student at that corporation, more than I experienced as a teacher, athletic coach, and as an administrator. And again, it starts with all of you, and I commend you from the bottom of my heart. You still have a lot of work to do, but by you calling it out as it is and not sugarcoating it and saying that, you know what, we are going to do something about it, speaks volume.
Hi, I'm Angela. I care.
So finally, we'd like to conclude our presentation sharing a short video titled Vision of Excellence. Miss Angie Urell, she is a early college math teacher. She also is the Black Student Union staff sponsor, as well as a first-year Superintendent Advisory Committee member.
Hi, I'm Angela Urell. I currently teach at Penn High School in the early college program, teaching Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. This is my 6th year teaching at Penn and my first year as a member of the Superintendent Advisory Council. I think it's very important because it brings community members, teachers, administrators, and the superintendent himself, as well as other leaders within the PHM Corporation together to collaborate and share ideas on how we can make the PHM School Corporation even better than what it is.
So again, that triangle of success is vital in terms of everything that we do as far as that vision of excellence. And so at this time, Dr. Sears and I will be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I have a couple questions. I very vividly remember when the alumni committee's report came to the attention of the board, and the board was deeply, deeply troubled. We met in the emergency executive session to implement what we deemed to be the two most appropriate remedies at the time, which were reinstituting the Superintendent's Advisory Council and hiring you, Mr. Mr. White. And I don't think that we could have placed, quite frankly, our efforts to redress the problems that our students had experienced in better hands than the two of you. My question is, I recognize that the alumni who participated in the video conference in which Dr. Thacker and I participated, it lasted several hours. They expressed very deep hurt about some of the experiences that they had within the PHM school system. It didn't take much for the wounds that they are experiencing to be palpably visible. And this is after some years of having graduated. I recognize many of them are in college, some of them are on to other careers. Do you know if they are meeting any longer, if they're communicating with one another? And the reason that I ask is I would deeply appreciate the administration making sure that those who brought these issues to our attention through the petition are kept informed about the progress that the administration, the district are making in terms of implementing systemic change.
Absolutely. I met with that group. The last time I met with them, it was a Zoom meeting, was in October. And the meeting went extremely well. And I even included a snapshot in our DEI S'mores newsletter. And also on a monthly basis, when we do have our meetings, I make sure to include the agenda topics to them, as well as any information in our DEI S'mores newsletters. And also I gave them the information if they choose to join a school board meeting as well. And so I do plan on reconnecting with them in a week or two and just kind of bring them up to speed in regards to our superintendent update to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. White. And I would even suggest sending them a link or just a PDF of the presentation that you've given tonight.
Absolutely.
So then we think we can expect action items to be brought before the board after the May 3rd meeting.
Correct. Yes, that was something that at our first meeting for the Superintendent's Advisory Council, that members of the council said that that was really important that we have actionable items. And so we were very deliberate in carving out a significant amount of time for everybody to work on a subcommittee to address an action item to present at the last meeting.
Great. Well, we'll look forward to hearing from the two of you after your May 3rd meeting and having some recommendations from the administration for further actions that we can take. Other board members, questions or comments? As always, we thank the both of you so much. We have many urgent, very important issues that we have to address. racial injustice ranks at the top of them. Thank you both for everything you're doing to help the school corporation. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our next item, which is a business operational services action item. Dr. Thacker.
Thank you, President Riley. Board of Trustees. This item we're talking about return to learn. You know, as we look back into March, last March 12th, when we sent notification out that we were going to be closing school for a period of time, and we're following the direction that we were allowed to with the governor. We were one of the first schools to do that, the state of Indiana. Avon had been first, and when we got into the period of time when we kept extending it, remember it was 2 weeks, then it was more, longer and longer, and we talked about, well, how do we bring everybody back? Okay, so we spent a lot of time working on plans and finding out additional information, working with our professionals in the health fields, as well as communicating with parents and making sure that people were informed, work with our administrators. How do we bring people back? What do we need to do? We knew that we had to have protocols in place. We spent countless hours throughout that period of time. All summer, we had people working extra time, investing to make sure that we could bring kids back. We worked with our Teachers Association. We collaborated with many, many people to ensure that we could address a lot of issues. We put things on our website, we continue to update, and we always talk about a plan. Here's our plan, here's the protocols, here's what we do with the elementary, here's what we do with busing, and it's still up there. So I'd invite any of you to look at that. We've always had a plan. We've not always been able to bring everybody back because part of the plan talked about using science to bring people back. I can assure you, when I think of it personally, my favorite time of the year is the beginning of the school year. And I say this to every single employee at the beginning of the school year. I love that time of year. It's like a holiday. It's like the winter holiday, around the Christmas season and other holidays. It's just so exciting to have our teachers come back, and then the first day of school, when the students are back, there's a special energy. So we're part of that triangle of success. We know that parents love their kids, we love their kids. We want everybody back, and so that we can do exciting things and prepare kids for college and career success. When we came back to school, you know that we started a virtual for 4 weeks. We started a virtual program for 4 weeks. Superintendents were interacting with the health professionals, and they advised us to do this. When we did have our plan, we worked with our Teachers Association, and I would say our teachers just done marvelous work as we brought students back. And then, of course, when we had them back, and then we've gone into virtual, okay, when we have the elementary students back in mid September, then we phased in, we had the K through 3, pre-K through 3, then we brought in the 4 and 5 the next week. That was the advice of the teachers, so we could social distancing, ensuring we could create success, ensuring that we could minimize and mitigate transmission of any COVID virus. Always thinking of the safety of our students, of our teachers, of all of our staff members, trying to ensure that we could prepare the kids to be successful. Kids are great wearing masks, hand washing, social distancing. They were just terrific. We have shields for teachers. We have barriers. We have a lot of things in place. Protocols, putting them in pods, making sure that we can keep them in cohorts, on buses, at the cafeteria, at the playground. So we've always had a plan. We've always had a plan, and we've shared the plans publicly. Okay, the plans didn't have a specific date because we can't tell exactly when something's going to occur. We want the kids back because we know it's the best environment. So when we had the students were out, the elementary continued, the middle schools, when it changed, and we'll give you some specific things to remind people of decision-making that we use. It's not one single thing. When the middle school and the high school students went on hybrid after the Thanksgiving week, then those students were out until the second semester. Okay, now they're back in hybrid, and it's fantastic. I think I'm getting so much positive feedback, and this is only the second week, so much positive feedback from kids who are back in school, from teachers. If you look on Facebook, they have celebrations, welcoming kids back, the parents, and so that's the kind of environment that we love. We love it when we have that environment. You see it in some of the elementaries, and there's science telling us why we can do some things. Everything that we have done, we've had to have an approved plan. Everything's been approved by health authorities. We've done nothing that was arbitrary or capricious. And so as we now move into the second semester, I'm going to give you an update. And these are things that we're doing. When we think about the elementary students, they have a choice. We try to, we really do try to make sure that we have great customer service and work with our partners. And so the kids are either in person or they're at home and virtual. So the pre-K, they continued right through grade 5. Then the next one, I mentioned the middle school. Okay, they came back a week ago. And I'll tell you what, 97% of the kids are in school. 97% of the kids are in school today. And so we looked at middle and high school. The high school at 97%, the middle school, 96% of one school, over 90% of the other schools. You can see the schedule that we have. Some families remain to stay in virtual. Others are in the hybrid. And many of the research that talks about the hybrid insists that that's an acceptable and the best method for us at this point in time, because we have large high school, we have large middle schools. And then as we think about the transition from virtual learning, and as you look at that, you think, we have been working on this since March. We're always working toward bringing everyone back. We want 100% of the kids back who elect to come back and are not on a virtual program, because we know that that's the best learning model, but we have to make sure that it's safe. And that means physically safe and psychologically safe for the kids and our employees. So as we look at the changes that we have to make, as we look at the learning environment changes, they're always complex. We can't just pivot and do something overnight. It's very complex. So Dr. Short is going to talk a bit about some of these things, and then as we transition, we'll give you more information. Dr. Short.
Thank you, Dr. Thacker. Yes. So as we're talking about some of the changes to the learning environment and what we're anticipating moving forward, they are complex, and we have been very consistent, but we've used the following guideposts as we've been looking towards those decisions. First of all, a recommendation from both the St. Joe County Local Department of Health and from the Indiana Department of Health. Indiana's Back on Track framework that the governor released for the entire state to follow, the availability of human resources and how important that is, and then the academic calendar and communications considerations. So as we move forward with that, when we look at the first bullet, the local health department experts are the most well-informed and well-equipped to interpret all of the data that is coming in. They are the ones who study the science, they are the ones who make the recommendations, and we take those recommendations based on the safety of all of our stakeholders, our students, our staff, the greater community. Critically important to us that what we do makes sense and that the metrics support our decisions. As we look at the Back on Track framework from the governor, it is color-coded, designed to guide all of the Indiana schools for decision-making about schooling and community spread. And then as we move on to the next component, when we're talking about human resources, we absolutely, in order to have in-person learning, need to have a critical mass of support available. So that includes teachers, support staff, substitutes, bus drivers, all of the people who are involved on a daily basis to make sure that everything runs and that our students are safe. And then when we look at the academic calendar and communications considerations, to the greatest extent possible, we would like those changes to align with natural windows and natural breaks in our school calendar. And also, to the greatest extent possible, that parents and teachers need to have time to plan for those adjustments. So we want to make sure that we're taking all things into consideration. And again, just to echo what Dr. Thacker started this section with, it really is a complex decision as we move forward. Dr. Thacker.
Thank you, Dr. Short. And now we're going to provide more information with regard to in-person, hybrid, and virtual models. But Mr. Aaron Leslie, our Chief Operating Officer, is going to talk specifically about some of the governor's plans and explain these things are factors in our decision making. We want your children to be safe. We want everybody in this room to be safe. Everybody's participating. So, Mr. Linsky?
Thank you, Dr. Thacker. So in the summer, the governor came out with his Back on Track plan, and then followed that up in early September with a color-coded model for the entire state to follow, so that we had some equity across the state and we're all looking at the same metric system. So obviously the goal is to provide a back on track system that school and local officials can utilize to understand the level of that community spread. And so that as counties change, they can make decisions based on that county. And that's been shared with not only us, but the greater public every Wednesday. Schools asked for that guidance and they delivered. And we still collaborate with our local health department to ultimately make the decision that's in the best interest of our local community. It does indicate that scoring does not trigger a state requirement of any action. States simply guiding us with the data that they have available. We're using our local officials to make the ultimate decision. Taking a look at the map, that is, again, these are released every Wednesday, and it's based on the previous week, beginning with Sunday. You can see that most of the state this past week, this is actually from this past Wednesday, is turning more orange. It was red the previous week. We are currently, I believe, a 2.5, and that indicates, and we'll get to that in a little bit, what that means for the entire state. But I think it's important to understand that there's two metrics that are represented. This is a two-metric system. It's based on the weekly cases per 100,000 and the positivity rate, which is a 7-day test, or 7-day for all tests. And so they take that average, they combine them together, and this is done at the state level, not at the local level, and provided to all of us. Then we look at what they indicated, and this is kind of our guideline on how we try to return. Obviously, at some point we were red. It means that there was a high community spread, indicating that grade schools can operate in person, which PHM has done since we returned in September. But local officials strongly recommend that a hybrid learning for the middle and high school. Now, we did that when the county turned red in November, as Dr. Thacker indicated. We're currently orange, which indicates moderate to high community spread. Grade schools, again, can remain open, but local officials, again, strongly recommend a hybrid learning for the middle and high schools. We are currently in a hybrid program. As we look forward, if we turn yellow, it would be moderate community spread, indicating that schools can operate, again, all grades in person, but increased vigilance, social distancing, hand hygiene, and masks. So that's obviously the next step that we're working towards, and not just us as a school community, but our greater community. We're all working towards eradicating COVID in the local area. And hopefully, it's all of our goal to get to blue, which is minimal community spread. All schools operate, but we are, again, limiting activity where social distancing is not possible. Dr. Thacker.
Thank you, Mr. Linsky. Safety is our highest priority. When we talk about our vision and we talk about our major goals, safety has always been our highest priority. And when we think of safety for our students, faculty, and staff, it means physical safety and psychological safety. And our goal, return students to in-person learning as quickly as possible for the guidance from the St. Joe County Department of Health. Now, obviously, those who are let's talk about in-person. If they're doing virtual, that's completely different. We have great partnerships. We appreciate the work with our parents, that triangle of success. We have absolutely amazing parents who are still working hard for helping us work in concert to prepare their kids for college and career success. We have amazing teachers. You see examples every single day. And our students are the best. We have fantastic students. The Indiana Department of Education gives us guidance. The Indiana Department of Health gives us guidance. We frequently talk with our local officials. We talk to numerous officials, more often with Dr. Fox than any of the others, and we appreciate the work that he's done with the local Department of Health. and the St. Joseph County Health Systems. We have a lot of partners who have given us a lot of advice and support. And so it's, and now to add some information, representing the PHM teachers, it's my pleasure to introduce our president of the PHM Teachers Association, Mrs. Lisa Langlow.
Good evening, Dr. Thacker and members of the board. Here we are again. I've been asked by you, I've been asked by parents multiple times, what do teachers want? And I believe I've been consistent in my message since March. Teachers want to return when it is safe. This is not a political statement or a statement that is meant to be vague. It is the truth. We are dealing with something we have never, ever dealt with before. No one doubts that our schools are an important part of the infrastructure of our community. Our schools provide safe, supportive learning environments for students and enable parents to work. PHM prides itself on the message that safety is our highest priority. Why would we go and stretch beyond what our health experts are advising? We believe that we need to continue to follow the advice of our state and local health experts and continue to follow the metrics for return, the same metrics we followed since March. If we do not follow the advice of scientists and the doctors, we most likely will see a spike again, leaving us challenged with staffing in our buildings. Our teachers are working harder than ever, and I think you recognize that. I don't know of a time where teachers weren't working full time. The job description for each grade level may look a little different, but there's absolutely no doubt that most of our teachers are working overtime and doing it for free. Parents have asked, what can they do to help teachers? We'd ask you to contact our governor. I found out today that according to a meeting with ISTA, the governor doesn't even have the teachers on the vaccination list as of today. And work with the state health department to not only put teachers, but all school employees in the category for essential workers so that we can all be a priority for the vaccine. It takes a village to run a school building. We need to remember our custodians, our food service, our office staff, our EAs, our TAs. They are vital to our everyday success. Encourage, better yet, demand that your children attend in-person classes on the days they're offered to your child. Encourage your child to turn their cameras on and be present during virtual instruction. Stop having large gatherings and social events. Help us limit the exposure so we can get these kids back. Our return to school can't come soon enough, but please let the experts continue to guide us. When, for maybe some of us, it's not exactly what we want to hear, but it's where we are in our world today. Something else I feel I have to add on a personal note. I've worked for this district for over 30 years. My husband works for this district. More than half of my career has been spent in some type of leadership in the association. I've worked with multiple administrators. The goal has always remained the same. We work together. This isn't an us against them kind of a relationship. There's no division. The school system works because administration and teachers do their very best to provide a safe and fair working and learning environment for everyone. Do we always agree, especially during COVID since March? No. Have we walked away frustrated? Yes. But at the end of the day, we can walk away from the table and still be respectful. Some of our teachers have been told by our parents that our triangle is broken. I guess we don't see it that way. Our triangle is weathering a gigantic storm.
Thank you, Ms. Langlow.
Thank you, Dr. Thacker. Thank you, Dr. Short. Thank you, Mr. Linsky. Thank you, Mrs. Langfeld, very much for your contributions to this presentation. Dr. Thacker, we obviously have a community filled with parents and stakeholders who have different points of view on how we should handle this situation. I noticed that we have a number of our parents today who are here supporting face-to-face learning. I know that we have parents who are watching via our live feed who are concerned about face-to-face learning. The one thing that encourages me, though, is that the community stakeholders and the parents who have communicated with the board are people of very goodwill. People on both sides of the discussion are hurting for their children and they want the best for their children. They just disagree how we get there. You've made it clear that in making its recommendations to the board, that the administration relies heavily on the local health department officials' recommendations. So I have a few questions for you. Let me start with that one. You mentioned that you are in contact with Dr. Fox. Can you give us more specifics? How often are you in contact with him? For example, there is information about new strains of COVID. Is this something that you will be discussing with him? When we tell the public that our guidance comes from local health department officials, what do they need to know about how often we are getting that guidance and how closely we are monitoring?
Sometimes Dr. Fox reaches out to us. In fact, we, as county superintendents, we've had numerous conversations, but within PHM, whenever we have a question for Dr. Fox, we contact him, he responds promptly, and we have conversations with him. I don't have an exact number, but we have talked to him numerous times, and he's extremely responsive. And yes, of course, with something that's new, that's coming up, and as we've got the students back in hybrid, he'll want to know what the attendance looks like, what it looks like. We have a dashboard, we share information, he gets reports on how many absences we have relative to COVID. So we'll share that information and he'll give us updates, yes. So we will definitely be talking to him this week, because this is the second week that we're back in hybrid, and I'm positive that he'll give us good advice and he gives us access to information.
Again, the parents and stakeholders on both sides of the conversation, they have the same goal, which is, let's get this community to the blue level under the state's metrics so that we can get our kids back in school face-to-face 5 days a week. We share that goal. When we eventually get there, we can't, as we sit here today, predict. But a question that board members occasionally receive is, what is the plan? You mentioned the return to learn plans that the administration recommended over the summer. I note that it was presented to the board, a Penn High School return to learn plan, a middle school return to learn plan, elementary return to learn plan. I recognize that these are living documents, but are these the same plans that the public can review in determining what our plans are as we sit here today for return to learn? And do they remain publicly available?
Yes, all the plans that we are publicly available. We want people from every single school to be familiar with the plans that we have for those schools. And it continues, we continue to get more sophisticated. You know, as we started, we looked at the metrics and we talked about having a rolling average of 14 cases per day. 14. We have not seen 14 for a long, long time. And so that's been adjusted upward. We learn more about what it looks like with the COVID cases. We've gone from a 14-day quarantine to a 10-day quarantine. So we're in this fluid situation. But when we're discussing what kinds of things could we do when we talk about phasing kids back in, bringing them back in when it's appropriately safe, we do have discussions about that, and we do have some drafts of ideas and such that we would do with that. We have not made them public because those aren't things that we're ready to do at this point.
In terms of the basic structure of the return to learn plan, it's there and what has been publicly available.
Yeah.
Do we understand that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Each school has a has that posted on its website. Their own return to learn plan.
Board members, other questions, comments?
I just echo in the sentiment expressed by Ms. Langfeld and you, Mr. Riley, that there's people on all sides of this issue, and I know many of them, and they're all people of goodwill that have made valuable contributions to PHM, and their families have, some of them for many decades, and it's multi-generational. So I certainly realize that this is just an issue where people of goodwill and reasonable minds are going to differ. I'm also encouraged by the return to learn plans that we had previously, and that you're working on new ones. And just the only comment I would have in those regards, it seems that this is going to be an incremental type situation. I know that if we would return students full-time tomorrow, there'd be many that would not want their students to return full-time tomorrow. So as the numbers hopefully go more in our favor and allow for more students to be immersed into the schools, to have an incremental solution where if there's any way possible for families that want their students to go back full-time to have that possibility, I think that would be a very good thing, while at the same time allowing parents that want to keep their kids on a virtual model to allow them to do that. I just think the more flexibility we can have in this situation, the better customer service we're going to have at PHM, the more families are going to feel that their kids are going back to an environment that they're comfortable and safe in, or are going to be able to stay home in a manner that's comfortable and safe.
Thank you, Trustee Woods and Trustee Riley. Some of the things that you're saying, of course, we have a fabulous school district. I talk about that triangle all the time. I'd say that the parents are what make us move from good to great. So we have great parent involvement, people who take great care of their children. And as we think about, we try to give as much as we possibly can with the conditions. I want to give you some examples. When we think about bringing kids back, we have students who are participating in the Elkhart Area Career Center in some activities. We have a contract with them that would lend themselves to people being back in a classroom. They're back and they're in school every day. Building trades students who are working outside, they're working every single day. We have athletic programs and some music programs. We're trying to give as much as we can and keep everything safe. We've got all these protocols in place. Okay, so everything that we do that brings us back incrementally, we learn from. We're so much better at dealing with the COVID issues right now than we were in August. And so we're very receptive to making change when it's appropriate. But we are advised that our health professionals to at this point be in a hybrid, and we're being put on alert with the danger of a new virus that's coming through, and they say it's more contagious and more children can get it. So we have those kinds of fears, and we're trying to act in the best interest of this entire community, making sure that we don't create more positivity, that we don't have more transmission of the virus. We want the kids back as soon as we can get them back safely. The best part of the schools is really the student body. It's fun to have the kids. People like having the kids here. So I don't remember ever sitting in my career in which I'm really talking to people all wearing masks. So during a pandemic, these are unusual times. So we have all kinds of challenges, things that we're doing more. And we're finding people aren't even catching the flu as much right now because they're wearing masks. So we're reducing some of the colds and the flus. We hope we can continue to learn. But yes, we'll be looking at things incrementally. We'll keep adding things that we can. We've had tournaments. Some of you have kids in sports, kids in music, kids in different. You see some of the creative things that Glenn Northern and the staff do. They put together these virtual kinds of programs, but we reduce the number of people who can attend a football game. We even have wrestling going on. Okay, so we have to get those plans, every single one, we get approved by the health professionals. We're not doing things arbitrarily. So we're in concert with them and working every single day to ensure that we have safety for the kids who are here right now, and so that we can ultimately bring all the kids back.
Other board members, questions or comments? In accordance with the board procedures, we do have a number of our visitors tonight who have requested to speak specifically on this topic. I note, and delightfully so, that some of our visitors who have requested to speak on this topic are some of our students. And I can't tell you how much the board loves when our students come and visit us, and you get to see how policies are made that affect your day-to-day education, and it's just wonderful to see you. What we'll do now is I will call on our visitors who have requested to speak in person, who are physically present here in the boardroom. When our visitors here in the boardroom have completed speaking, then I'll ask Ms. Bradbury if we have any online visitors who would like to address the board. Before I do so, I need to read the following statement. Anyone wishing
Mr.
to...
Riley, can we take 5 minutes before, because I see you have numerous green sheets in front of you, you probably have some interested people on. Can we take 5 minutes, just a little recess before we go into our hearing of our constituents, please?
Let's do this. Let me finish reading the statement, and then we'll take 5 minutes. So anyone wishing to address the board is invited to do so under this item without registering. A time limit of 3 minutes shall be enforced for persons wishing to speak during this hearing of visitors. It is requested that names and addresses be stated at the beginning of such comments. Individuals may speak only once during this section of the agenda. Personnel issues are not to be addressed during open sessions of the board. Concerns about employees of the district should not be discussed publicly, but should be brought to the superintendent or his designee. The board's attorney, Jeff Johnson, will keep time and alert you when your 3 minutes have expired. And in the interest of everybody's time, we do ask that you observe the 3-minute limit. On motion from Mr. Woods, we'll stand in recess for 5 minutes. As I mentioned before, we took a short break. We do have some visitors who have signed up to address the specific agenda item. And the first one who has registered is Mrs. Christy Risk.
My name is Christy Risk, and I live on Shoreline Drive in Granger. Benjamin Franklin once said, "Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I may remember. Involve me and I learn." The First Lady of the United States, a teacher, had this quote embroidered on the lining of her coat last Wednesday. Let me say this again. Involve me and I learn. President Riley, Dr. Thacker, and members of the board, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. How are we involving our children in learning? Telling them to stare at a screen for 7+ hours. They will forget. Teaching our kids to fear is what they will remember. We need to be involving them so they learn. Tonight, I challenge the PHM School Board, Dr. Jerry Thacker, Dr. Mark Fox, the Teachers Union, to come together, to unite, and to put our children first. I challenge them to openly and honestly communicate with each other. I challenge them to meet weekly to return our children to school full-time. I challenge them to candidly look at the outcomes of keeping our children home for 10 long months. This should be considered an all-hands-on-deck emergency. And there's a blame game going on in this community. It's someone else's fault why our children cannot return full-time. Why can elementary students return safely full-time, but middle school can't? Are there other factors in play? Suicide, depression, isolation, working parents, student ages. Why are some issues weighed more than others? Other school corporations have successfully brought all their students back. Brownsburg Community School Corporation is one. They are a similar size to PHM, and they are ranked the 4th best school district in Indiana. I took the time to call their administrative office and had a conversation with them. And my one takeaway was they are so proud of what they are doing. They are offering in-person education for all of their students 5 days a week. They thought outside the box. They put our children first, and they found a way to make this work. I commend Brownsburg Community School Corporation. President Riley, Dr. Thacker, and members of the board, we are in a dire situation, and it must be addressed immediately. I respectfully ask that you take courageous steps that we need to take to return our children to school full time. Follow the words of Benjamin Franklin. Involve me and I learn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Risk. The next two are individuals who would like to speak at the same time. Libby Ashowski and Macy Cummings.
Hi, my name is Libby Ashowski. I live on.
No, you don't have to announce your. we give you a pass. You're a student. You don't have to announce your address.
So I'm a freshman here at Penn, and as a student learning in the virtual and hybrid setup, it obviously has changed a lot of what school looks like for us. For a lot of students, this really just isn't working. Our generation is the first to have to learn virtually while also in the midst of a global pandemic. And we deserve to have our needs be taken into better consideration. Some students are being set up for the rest of their lives, deciding whether or not they go to college and are successful in the long run. Not everyone can set themselves up for success in an environment that wasn't made to be educated in. Many students are struggling and need to have the option to be in person full time. We deserve more options. If it's possible, then it's worth it. We deserve to be educated.
I'm Macy Cummings, and I'm also a freshman at Penn High School. And Libby brought up some great points about how the effect of the hybrid schedule is affecting the students at Penn and all the Penn-Harris-Madison schools. Although we are fortunate to have access to technology and the resources we need to not fall further behind, emotionally it is difficult because the hybrid creates more stress than usual for students and the teachers. A lot of this stress is caused by the changing parts. The uncertainty and unreliability of this time is amplified by the changes of the school. While this pandemic stretches our flexibility and control, being in person is a far more efficient way of the delivery of knowledge. As much as I thought I'd love an extended vacation, I do miss the familiarity of communication more.
Libby and Macy, thank you so much. Our next speaker is Susan King.
Good evening, I'm Susan King, and I live on Hearthside Drive in Granger. First, I want to open by recognizing the administration, the board, and most importantly, the teachers. Your flexibility, your grace, and your fortitude in the last 10 months does not go unnoticed. Thank you. As a parent, I supported the hybrid learning that we did last year. I supported it in the beginning of this year. I applauded us for going back to setting our K-5 kids back. And when the health systems were strained in November, I fully supported all virtual learning. I don't argue with the science that you're using. What I'm asking is for you to take a step back and look at this beyond the metrics that you are currently looking at. And recognize that there is an educational, psychological, and financial hardship that remote learning is having on our children and on our families and on our community. There are well-documented studies from the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics and other organizations that have made it clear the social and economic costs that are keeping our schools virtual. As a parent, I'm asking you to start listening to the kids, the hundreds, and I will say thousands of kids who are checked out, given up, and disengaged. I have 2 children at home. There is a compounding increase in the number of students being treated for anxiety and depression. A statistic this school system and the health department are not currently measuring. It's time we recognize that mental health is as important to our children as their physical health. And we must give it equal weight when we are determining a path forward. Mental health professionals in our community can attest to the strain. In addition, it is supported by the CDC that shows a proportion of emergency departments visits have increased in our teens 31% over last year. We have seriously underestimated the psychological harm of prolonged virtual learning. No one wants a page in our yearbook that talks about the teachers and the students who have died from COVID, nor do we want a page in the yearbook of our students who have died of suicide. I don't think anyone in this room is asking for recklessness, a reckless rush to in-person learning. We understand the decisions are complicated, yet the reality is fully reopening strategies have been successfully implemented in our community, in our region, and in the United States. The medical community is in support of this, that in-classroom learning is possible and is optimal and safe using layered mitigation strategies. So I join the many concerned parents tonight and implore you to look at a plan that fully opens the school for our middle school and high school students. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. King. Next up is Mr. Brian Jones.
Thank you, President Riley, Dr. Thacker, Board. Brian Jones, I live on Signal Hill Court in Granger. I stand here tonight on behalf of Return to Learn Committee, all the families, students, and educators that share our belief that students should return to the classroom full-time, in person, and can do so safely. Many of them you've already heard from some of the students, many more will speak. I want to say we're 100% in support of the board and Ms. Langfield and the students and the teachers. But I stand here tonight also concerned and a little confused. I'm concerned because we're failing our students and not putting them first. They're smart, they're intuitive, and they see what's happening around them. They sense it and they're confused and they need things to make sense. You just heard from 2 of them, we'll hear from more. As adult leaders in the community, we're the people that our students turn to for logic and to make sense of everything. We need to put our kids first. They need consistency and they need structure. We need to put our kids first. They need to be in their peer community. They need to share their similar experiences, and they need to know that they're not alone in any feelings that they're having. They need to learn among their peers, not in isolation on a screen for hours on end every single day. We need to put our kids first. Academic performance is down. Failure rates are up. We've discussed this. Right beside that, depression and suicidal thoughts are up as well. Are we going to stand by and let this continue? And how low do the academic results need to be, and how dire will the consequences be before somebody stands up and does the right thing? COVID's going to be part of our lives for longer than any of us want. And we owe it to our students to figure out how to get them back in school. It's time to return full-time and in person. I stand here confused tonight because how is it feasible or logical that I can go sit in a bar shoulder to shoulder with a stranger for hours on end? My family, including my children, students, your students, can attend church, go out to eat, enjoy vacation, work out in a gym, and do many, many other things. Look around. The community's not regressing. They're coming out in numbers. How can we do all these things, but we can't come to school? How do we just know today that teachers aren't on the vaccine list if you've been working on this since March? Today, I learned that today too, but I'm not a teacher. In Illinois, they're on the list. Here, they're not. How do we just know that today if we've been working on March? If we're waiting on blue may never come. What are we going to do different than looking at these things and going, well, when blue gets here, we'll go? We got to put our kids first. The plan seems static. It's lacking a little bit of vision, and it's lacking some execution.
3 minutes.
Vision without execution is hallucination. Perhaps that's why we're all confused right now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Amanda Jones.
Good evening. First, I just want to say thank you for that very thorough update that you provided. Many of us have been coming to these meetings since September, always very curious why there's never, ever, ever been an update on your plan ever on the agenda. It was an upset parent at the last meeting who implored you and called you to action to put this plan, to update your plan on the agenda. Wow, thank you so much for doing that. I know people listening at home, others that are not as involved, we're happy to hear about that plan. Yes, it's on the website. It's on every school's website. There's a lot of information on that website. So I think taking the time and being considerate to update us on a monthly basis is not too much to ask. I'm sitting here listening and I'm thinking, why don't we give all the teachers N95 masks? That would be a great start, right? Just like our doctors are using and our nurses, and I know others, firefighters aren't even using N95 masks. They feel safe, they're at work safely. So that just kind of came on to me tonight, like that would just be something, part of your plan that you could at least show that you're making an effort towards a full-time in-person return. So that's all I really wanted to say, was just thank you for that update that we've been asking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Jones. Appreciate that. Next up is Christy Hull and Wrigley Hull. Did the two of you want to speak together or separately?
Separate.
That's fine. Yes,
If
absolutely.
you got the end where I filled out a form for him.
No problem.
My name's Christy Hull. I live in Birch Lake Drive in Granger. For years, we've been told to get our kids off screens. Screen time is directly related to an increase in depression, anxiety, and suicide. In a recent study, it showed that kids who spent 5 hours or more on devices, a phone or laptop, nearly half of them had said they had contemplated, planned, or attempted suicide at least once, compared to the 28% of those who have less than 1 hour of screen time a day. The results could not be more clear. Teens who spend more time in front of a screen are more likely to be unhappy, and those who spend less time on a screen activities are more likely to be happy.
On Wednesday, January 6th, parents received an email from the PHM school district stating that 7% of high school students nationwide had reported a suicide attempt. Indiana reports the highest rate in the entire country of teens who have not only considered suicide, but actually attempted to take their lives. The district's proposed solution is to have our kids take a suicide prevention class online in front of a computer screen. We can all agree that COVID is indeed a serious disease for those at risk. For a virus that has a 99.8 recovery rate for 18 and under, it is totally unacceptable that we are putting so much mental hardship on our children that will undoubtedly create long-lasting and potentially devastating consequences. The cure cannot cause more harm than the disease. We hear all this talk about the triangle to have success. The students, the teachers, the parents are not connected. How will we ever have success when students, teachers, and parents are not being listened to? Teachers have stated in firsthand conversations that they haven't been asked their opinion or for their input. Many are afraid to speak out for fear of adverse career ramifications or being chastised by their peers. Students need to be in school full-time and receive the best education from their teachers, like so many of the neighboring districts that have in-person learning. It's time to return full-time and in person. Put our kids first, put them in school. The studies show that the transmission of COVID in schools is at far less rate than the general community. PHM is doing a great at that. They put in many great management, so that's possible. So I ask that we put our kids first and let them go back to school. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hull. And now Mr. Wrigley Hull.
Hi, my name is Wrigley Hull. I am a 7th grader at Discovery Middle School. I find it difficult to remain focused and motivated while at home because of so many distractions around me. Please allow us to go back to school in person for the best and healthiest learning environment. Allow us to be with our teachers so that they may have the best opportunity to teach like so many schools around us. In-person learning will also help kids be social and truly interactive with their peers. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Wrigley. We appreciate you being here tonight to address this. Next, we'll go with Lisa Shonsky.
Hi, I'm Lisa Shasky. I live on Lakeshore Drive in Granger. Thank you for your update on the Return to Learn plan tonight, Dr. Thacker. I'm going to build on what Brian Jones was speaking about earlier. That vision that Thomas Edison spoke of is being seen in many districts around Indiana. These school corporations are putting kids first. They are returning to learn full-time and in person while still giving a virtual option. There are many schools that are full-time in person. I'm going to list them. Clay Community, Whitco, West Noble, Whitley County Consolidated, Blue River Schools, John Glenn, Middlebury, Fairfield Community, Lakeland, Tippecanoe Valley, Central Noble, Warsaw, Newcastle, Knightstown, Sheridan, Tipton, Union North United, Argos, Bremen, Plymouth, Westview, Prairie Heights, Fremont, Hamilton Community, Brownsburg, DeKalb County, Eastern DeKalb County, Central, Rochester, Triton, Huntington County, Wabash City, Manchester, North Miami Community, Carroll High School, Fort Wayne, Lake Central High School, which by the way has an enrollment similar to ours, Munster High School, Portage High School, Jimtown High School, Brandywine High School in Niles, Valpo, Avon, Madison, Heritage Junior and Senior High School, Leo High School, New Haven Junior and Senior High School, Hull Harding Junior High School, Woodland Junior and Senior High School, and Homestead High School in Fort Wayne. These are all schools that are up in the northern part of Indiana, just like Penn High School. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Shelsky. Next up is Allison Peters.
Hello, my name is Alyssa Petras, and I live on Windermere Drive in Granger. Before I begin my statement, I just want to say I have 4 children in the Penn School District. We are in elementary school. One is a student at Discovery. The difference in morale in my children makes me want to cry. The 3 that are in school are happy and they are thriving. My son, who is on a hybrid schedule, is struggling and he is sad, and it breaks my heart every single day. Now into my statement. Schools should have the same priority as health workers and first responders. Our teachers are essential workers. Schools and services are services and schools and the services they provide are just as valuable and essential to the future vitality of our community. Schools are where present learners become future, not just reading, writing, and arithmetic, but to navigate interpersonal conflicts and become productive members of a communal learning society with human interaction. Why is PHM not lobbying the state on behalf of our faculty, staff, and students to make this a reality? Are vaccines mandatory for return? In the meantime, our community leaders, health and school officials, faculty, and staff are okay with restaurants, bars, trampoline parks, football games, and the like being open for in-person attendance. And those very people are often in attendance themselves and sing without proper social distancing protocols. They espouse to promote as necessary mandatory. This is okay, but a full person learning environment is not okay. I acknowledge that every member of the PHM community is not in favor of returning to the classroom, and I support their decision as they feel it is their right for their family. You have provided an option for them that should remain in place. Where is the choice that is best for the majority of our students who suffer in isolation with academic performance, with depression, with declining mental health? With attendance levels as they were today, at least every high school student that was in attendance in the classroom last week could return to the building, and we would full-time in person, and we would not be over 50% capacity. We will continue to understand challenges, build alliances, bring people together, and develop solutions that provide our best total educational environment for the majority of our students. What are you going to do for your students, our children that so desperately need you to do the right thing?
Thank you very much, Mrs. Petras. Our next speaker is Luke Petras. Come on up, Luke.
Hi, I'm Luke Petras, and I go to Discovery. I'm a 7th grader at Discovery Middle School. And can you please let us go back to school full-time, 5 days a week, in person too? I learned so much better during in-person school 5 days a week. And I have great teachers, and as a student, I benefit better when I can be in their classroom full time. Please let us go back to full in-person school. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you addressing the board. Our next speaker on this form is written Michaela Lee and McCoy Lee. Would you like to speak together or separately? I'm sorry.
Please.
Okay, Michaela, come on up.
Hi, my name is Michaela Lee, and I'm a junior at Penn. I'd just like to start by saying that junior year is supposed to be my most influential, crucial, and my most challenging year. But so far, this has been perhaps one of my most easiest years at school. And to start this, I would just like to say that as we went back to hybrid last week, I go on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and so I decided I was going to keep track of the students and the time that we had left, just so I could see. And in my first block there were 7 of us in school, and we had no other time, which was really great. Second block, there were 3 of us, and we had no work to do whatsoever, so we just sat there on our phones. Third block, there were 12 other students, and we only had 30 minutes left, so it was overall a great class. We talked a lot, and we got a lot of learning. My fourth block, I had 0 other students. It was just my teacher and I in the classroom and a bunch of students on the TV that was projected, and we just sat there, and it was the same thing that I would have done in class or at home. And then my black days, my first block, there were 8 other students, and we had 30 minutes left after a class of learning. Second block, there were only 3 of us, and we had 45 minutes left after our learning. And then fourth block, there were 3 other students. And what we did, we got on Zoom. We sat in class, got on the Zoom, and we just learned. We listened to our teacher via Zoom, as we would have done in school. So I would just like to say that say that hybrid isn't working. No matter how teachers may claim that, oh, it's good for students, it's not. I am not learning. I am not succeeding. There's no success in this triangle of success. I can't think of the last time when I studied for a test, because studying isn't necessary. Before the end of first semester, our principal sent out an email saying that we were allowed to redo any assignments, any tests, anything, and we were able to turn in any late scores without any punishment. So my brother, one of my brothers, he was working all week on his assignments that were due in September, and he still got full points for it. And I just don't think that's not fair. And I know students may be grateful for it, that, oh, they get an easy pass, but it's not helping us in life. I'm not going to go to college with my junior year being able to retake assignments that I started in August. Like, that's not how the real world works. That's not how I should learn. That's not how any of this should be operating. Last thing, I would just like to touch on mental health. We talk a lot about social and environmental learning, and mental health should be a big part of our schooling, but I feel like my mental health and all my peers and our mental health is not a concern. We are stuck at home, and we learn advisory at home, and they're saying we need to have human interaction when we are stuck at home all by ourselves. So I just want to finish that saying hybrid is not working. This is not how school should be learned. I am not being treated fairly. There's no success. Thank you.
Okay, then thank you. McCoy Lee?
Hi, my name is McCoy Lee. I'm a freshman at Penn High School. Here's my sister, as you guys said. As she said. So just like she said, I would like to tell you guys that hybrid is not working for me. It doesn't push me at all. I have spent many classes in my bed, just logging into the Zoom meeting, just turning off my camera. And I'm sure I'm not the only one doing this, and a lot of this is probably just my laziness, but I have had very little persuasion and very little, what's the word? I can't remember the word, but very little motivation to get on to school and to actually learn. My grades have not been the best until Mr. Gallagher got on and he gave us the announcement that we could all turn in all of our assignments. I was the brother that she was talking about, who I did almost none of my homework in one of my classes, and I turned it all in, and it helped me with my grades immensely. In English, I was not doing the best. Actually, no, I was doing fine in my class, but I was given an optional final at the end of the year, and I took it, and it only counted for me if it raised my grade up. While it was great for me, I'm sure it was not very fair and will not do good for me in the long run. For hybrid school, like my sister said, also, not very many people come. Anybody I talk to, the reason that they do come is because they are being forced to come. They hate hybrid, and every single kid that I've talked to wants to go back. And we're all jealous of kids that get to stay home. Also, you got the homework makeup, and when we are in class, there's little to no dialogue. It's very awkward. Sometimes we log into Zoom and just watch our teachers teach the same thing that they're teaching to us to the kids at home. It's very unfair, and when I'm at home, I feel like we get the same amount of attention. So it's just, I feel like I'm not getting to know my teachers at all. I'm not developing any connections with the kids at school, and it's just awkward. So I'd like to say, please let's go back to hybrid. Thank you.
McCoy, thank you very much. Lori Bauer?
Hi, my name is Lori Bauer, and I live on Missoula Road in Osceola. I just want to say thank you for the invitation here tonight to give me the opportunity to speak. I feel like the things I wrote down, I just want to throw away, because what the kids just said, I'm lucky to have a freshman here at Penn that has an open relationship with me. She talks to me, so I'm a work from home mom. I'm a registered nurse. My husband's a firefighter. We have open communication with her. I'm able to see the Zooms that she's getting on daily, like she spoke of. And for example, today, in her geography class on Zoom, I have pictures even for documentation if anyone would like to see. 20 kids on Zoom. My daughter is the only one with her camera on. Why? Because I'm that parent that makes her turn her camera on. She's frustrated because she goes into a breakout session to talk and the other kids' cameras are off and no one is participating, no one is talking. It is silent, it is awkward. This teacher is a friend. He's very frustrated. It's hard to teach to black screen when there's no interaction. Kids are safer in school. We need to listen to our children when they say they feel isolated, they're depressed, they have anxiety. Addictions are fed in isolation. And we have to remind ourselves that COVID is a 99% cure rate, and our children are not dying of COVID. They are not dying of COVID. So I have two personal friends that have been affected by this, children. One who has a daughter in high school who has suffered with anorexia, bulimia, from social isolation. She's a professor here in our hometown, and she is also just heartbroken at seeing what's happening to her daughter just from not being able to come to school. I have another friend who has a daughter in high school that has had an inpatient hospitalization from anxiety, depression, and needing medications. And these are parents that are educated, that are able to be around their children to help them and push them. But there are so many kids that don't have that at home, and they're getting sexually abused, they're getting not fed meals, they're getting beat, and the list goes on. And I feel like, just speaking from my nursing perspective, we're so focused on everyone being safe from not getting sick from COVID, but does it matter 5 years from now when you hear all the stories of the kids that have overdosed or killed themselves or can't function as adults in society because they were socially isolated and not allowed in school? So I'm here to say that I pray that the board makes the right decision and allows our children to return to school 5 days a week in person where they belong. I was the girl that ate dirt as a kid, drank out of the water hose, shared my drinks and my food with everyone, and I realized COVID is serious.
3 minutes are up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bauer. We really appreciate it. Next speaker is Scott Deshowski.
Hello, my name is Dr. Scott Deshowski. I live on Lakeshore Drive in Granger. The mission of Penn-Harris-Madison School Corporation is to provide an educational environment for students to reach their highest academic achievement. We will prepare them to be responsible, healthy, contributing citizens who have acquired the skills to be lifelong learners ready to adapt to a changing world. That is your mission statement. That is your mission statement when times are good, and that is your mission even in the throes of a pandemic. But instead of a fulfilled mission, many of our students' engagement levels have entered into a free fall, and I fear their emotional development and ability to adapt to change is at significant risk. And who can blame them? As we've heard, I'd imagine it is difficult to learn those skills while spending the entire day, day after day, in bed, logged into a virtual classroom with the videos turned off. It's not easy. It's not possible to mitigate every point of risk, but it is still your mission. And instead of delivering on this mission, the message has been sent to our students that their education and personal growth is valued less than the impact of fear. The message has been sent that science is neither trusted nor relied upon to guide our way. Whether those statements reflect the truth, whether this reflects what is in your hearts, or what you intend, that is the message that has been heard. I have a deep respect for our teachers, And I understand many teachers feel vaccination is mandatory before returning to in-person full-time school. And while I wholeheartedly agree that teachers should be prioritized in the vaccination schedule, our experience in healthcare has proven that mitigation strategies can successfully minimize transmission. Our healthcare workers have spent months unprotected by a vaccine, face-to-face with known COVID-positive patients who are coughing or aerosolizing. And in clinics, we see upwards of 25 patients a day in small exam rooms wearing only masks and eye protection. No need for gowns and gloves or N95s in clinic unless seeing patients suspected of COVID. And our transmission rates in all venues have remained low. I realize a clinic or a hospital is not the same as a classroom or a school. There are different challenges, each with different solutions. I believe it is possible to return to school safely with minimal risk of transmission. My opinion is not intended to sound cavalier, reckless, or disrespectful. It is based in science, evidence, and experience.
3 minutes are up. Thank you.
I request you establish a culture of greater transparency in all that you do. We know the operations of
Mr.
PHM.
Shawsky, out of respect for everybody else, your 3 minutes are up. Thank you very much for presenting to the board tonight.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is McCoy Lee.
I put down two.
Oh, sorry, McCoy's already spoken, and then Wrigley called. Okay, Mrs. Bradbury, do we have anybody online who wants to speak to the board?
No, President Riley, I do not.
Dr. Thacker, before we move on to the next section of the agenda, some questions have been raised tonight that board members have heard before. While we have our members of the public here who've asked the questions, while we have people viewing online, I thought maybe we just take a few minutes as succinctly as possible to answer some of these questions. And if the administration isn't prepared to answer the questions right now, I would ask that the administration be prepared when next the board meets to answer the questions. One of the questions was a challenge to the administration, but actually was not a question, it was a challenge to the administration to meet with Dr. Fox and the teachers on a weekly basis. You did speak to how often you're meeting with Dr. Fox. Can you speak to how often you're meeting with the Teachers Association?
I would say that we're communicating with the Teachers Association more than one time a week. It is regular one-on-one.
When coupled with the communications that you're having with Dr. Fox, would you say that the administration is meeting with Dr. Fox and the teachers at least on a weekly basis?
I would say we're averaging that much. Sometimes we speak more often than once a week.
Two questions came up from two of our parents in terms of PPE. One of the questions was, why don't we just give teachers N95 masks? And another of the questions was, why is PHM not lobbying the state for greater protections for teachers? Can you speak to that?
Actually, we work through our associations. I belong to the Superintendent Association, and we do work with our legislators. And I know that we have, and ISTA and the State Teachers Association has been advocating for teachers getting vaccines and moving up to be at a higher priority.
Speaking of vaccines, a statement was made expressing some surprise that, or implying that the administration or the board was surprised to learn just today that teacher vaccinations the vaccinations are not available for teachers. The board and the administration, we've known that quite some time, have we not?
That's accurate, and that is determined by a committee of health experts that decided on going with an age range. It was my understanding that the teachers were at a higher level, but then they were bumped to a lower level to accommodate the people who are the most at risk.
One of the more common comments, sincere, heartfelt comments that we received, especially from our students who attended today, is concern about their own future in terms of students participating in class by Zoom, in terms of grades suffering, And one of our students even made, expressed a concern about whether college is in the future for her. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. When we're looking at classes, whether they're in person or they're virtual, we're expecting to have a curriculum offering which is teaching the academic standards. We're expecting it to be appropriately paced so that the students are learning those standards within a prescribed period of time. We're expecting the methodology to ensure that teaching is going on, that students are given an opportunity to demonstrate they understand the material, and that they are on a thing of understanding, ensuring that they're mastering the material, giving opportunities for a guided practice, checking for understanding, guided practice, independent practice. And then when we look at formative assessments to ensure that they're learning things well, and then teaching and reteaching, teaching, testing, reteaching, retesting, those things are supposed to be occurring in good teaching. So if there are things that are not happening, then that's when we want you to talk with the teachers, talk with the principals. We want good teaching to go on. If we're teaching the academic standards, we know that with the appropriate rigor, and remember, we have a highly motivated student population, which is one of the top performing groups in the state of Indiana. Okay, so when we look at their will to be successful, if we re-engage that, I'm confident we'll show improvement. We'll make sure that we're reviewing those kinds of things with Dr. Short, who supervises the principals, and we'll let them know these kinds of things. But I do encourage you to reach out to the teachers, reach out to the principals, and make sure that positive experiences are occurring. We want them to continue learning. We want our students to be successful as they go on that pathway to college or career success.
I saved what I perceive to be the most compelling concern expressed by several of our patrons and a couple of our students, which naturally involves the emotional health of our students and the elevated risk of suicide. I say this last because I'd like for you, Dr. Thacker, to explain to those who are here who have expressed those concerns, for those who are watching via our live feed, because by far this is what the board has been most concerned about from the get-go in terms of virtual learning. Please talk to the extent possible about what the district is doing to identify students who are at risk, to reach out to them and to give them the support that they need.
When we think about being successful, our goal is to have students and adults self-actualize in Penn-Harris-Madison. So when we think of Maslow's hierarchy, the first thing we want to make sure is that they meet the physiological basic safety and such. As we start looking at the students who are engaged in learning, we want to make sure that they belong to a group, they belong to working with that teacher, a partnership, working with their classroom. And so we try to create communities. We have in our classrooms community meetings that regularly are held with lots of teachers working with the classroom, starting the very day that start with that kind of connection. So when they have that kind of belonging, then they're more likely to feel a sense of self-esteem. When they have the self-esteem and they're being highly successful, they're more likely to self-actualize, and we help kids kind of soar with their strengths, identify deficiencies. We have school counselors, we have from Youth Services Bureau, we have counselors and their social workers, we have administrators that they can reach out to, they can reach out to teachers. We've trained virtually every single teacher in our school system to do these kinds of things. So a teacher can be the first point of contact, and if there is something more distressing, we want them to reach out to a counselor. And I think if there's anything I need to add to that, Dr. Sears, I mean, we put additional personnel in place, hired additional personnel to ensure that we can have counseling services in each of the schools. So that would be the recommendation. Self-referral, parent referral. We want the kids to be successful. We want to address their mental health, any kind of anxiety issues that they have.
as discussed at last school board meeting, representatives from the district actually have even made wellness checks, personal wellness checks on students.
We've had lots of teachers and administrators reach out and communicate with parents, with students, ensuring that they are okay physically and psychologically, socially. So it's an ongoing process, and that's why we take the time. We want the students to be successful. But what the first thing that a student could do if the student is uncomfortable contacting a teacher, and just there's usually, when we've done surveys and had focus groups, students have indicated there's always one person in a building that they can have, they have a contact or positive relationship that they trust. But they can always go to a counselor or call the building principal. They call the building principal, we'll get you the right kinds of services. So we hired the people and expanded the number of personnel that we have to ensure that we can help address these issues. We want people to reach out to us.
Dr. Thacker, thank you very much. I recognize that you weren't expecting me to ask you these questions, but I thought while we have everybody here who's just asked the questions in the interest of trying to get information to our stakeholders and people who obviously have dedicated themselves to bring these issues to our attention, let's take some moments and put some answers out there. I do agree with the comment that Mrs. Jones made. I think that the administration should be prepared to publicly update the board on a monthly basis as our COVID protocols and our return to learn plan progresses. Let's move on to the next item on the.
Mr. Rapp, this is Rose.
Mrs. Riff, please go ahead.
But this is the first, I'm glad that you shared that some additional people were hired to help with all of the counseling services. As a parent, there's been a lot of communication that's come out this year. And in all of our school newsletters, there tends to be many parts to that for a lot of obvious reasons. I think it's a very good idea to have a standalone, crystal clear, this is who you can call if you perceive that your child is not well, is a threat, what have you. I don't think it should be the building principal. I think the principal is by nature an intimidating figure in the lives of most children. So if we've hired extra personnel, I think we need to give some extra thought to making sure that those phone numbers are in the hands of every parent, not embedded in a big long email. I'll be honest, I am comfortable with the decision-making matrix, that it uses a framework statewide, that it uses our local health department, et cetera. But what I heard today gave me a lot of pause. And so I'd like to ask the administration to read. Mrs. Risk mentioned Brownsburg School Corporation. Mrs. Zashowski mentioned so many I couldn't write them down, all of them. That our central office takes some time to identify just a handful of these school corporations, to reach out to them and to learn what they're doing. That's not to say we will replicate the practice, but I feel like, we've had to rewrite the playbook in the last year in education, and I'd like to not reinvent the wheel if somebody's figured out something that might be promising. Also, we're heading into eventually warmer weather. The prospect of having more open air, what have you. I'd like to see the administration do some creative thinking about, as we head into those months, if there's a possibility incrementally to utilize the weather creatively to our benefit.
Thank you,
And those are great points. Thank you. One thing I'd like to clarify. When I said call the principal, I mean for reaching out saying, who should I talk to?
Yeah, right.
Get in contact, because they'll know exactly.
May I ask a question?
Yes, please. Sure.
listening to some of the people who have been speaking, particularly noted some of the students at Penn, and they were talking about the fact that even though we're coming back now a couple of days a week with the hybrid where you can have in-person learning, but you're only having 2 or 3 or 4 students in the classroom. That's concerning to me. I mean, so many people want to come back to school, and I understand that. We all want kids to come back to school. And here's an opportunity for students to come back 2 days a week, which I think should be better than none. And I'm wondering why the students, is that something that's prevalent through the entire Penn High School or corporation? Only a few students are coming back and not taking advantage of the opportunity for the in-person learning? Or is that just an isolated example? Only happens a few times a day. I'd like to know what our attendance is, as far as students coming back, and how many students we're actually having in the building on those hybrid days. Do we have any data on that at this point?
We'll take a look at the attendance in a variety of classrooms. We'll do an audit.
Yeah, I mean, here we have people want to come back to school. Well, hey, let's come back. You got 2 days a week, that's better than none. And if more kids come back, then maybe the teachers wouldn't have to spend so much time on the computer and could spend more time with the students in the classroom. That might be a start anyway, getting things back to the way they should be. Just my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Other board members, questions, comments? Well, again, on behalf of the board, I do want to take a moment and thank everyone who contributed something tonight to our discussion. I especially want to take a moment and thank our students who have come here and stayed here until 9:15 to express their opinions, to express your experiences. We've had presentations from students before. I don't remember having as professional, well put together presentations from as young as 7th graders on topics that are highly controversial in our community. I just want to tell you how proud we are of you for coming here tonight and to speak to the board, which obviously has to be uncomfortable for you, but thank you so much for doing it, as well as our parents on both sides of the discussion. We want you to know we very much do consider you to be our community partners. We very much value your opinions. We are listening to you, and hopefully tonight you've started to receive some of the answers that are responsive to the questions lingering in your minds. We're available, and this is just a continuing conversation that we hope to have with you. We'll move on to the next action. I'm sorry, at this point in time, students, parents of students, you're welcome to stay for the balance of the school board meeting. We do recognize you might want to go home, and if that's your decision, we'll pause for a minute so that you can take your students and go on home.
Thank you, guys.
Moving on to business action items for the evening. Dr. Thacker.
Thank you, President Riley. Board of Trustees, we're going to move to the adoption of resolution to transfer amounts from education fund to the operations fund on a recurring monthly basis. So we have with us our Director of Business Services, our Executive Director, Mr. Jerry Hawkins. So he will address this business item. Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Dr. Thacker, President Riley, and members of the board. You have before you a resolution, very similar resolution as we've done the past 2 years. It is a slight increase over the previous year due to the increase in costs of those expenses that were originally in the general fund that are now paid for out of the operation fund. So I'll be happy to explain anything more about that if you have any questions.
Board members, questions or comments for Mr. Hawkins? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adopt the resolution to transfer the amounts from the Education Fund to the Operations Fund for the months of January 2021 through December 2021 in the amount of $718,834 as presented?
I so move.
Mr. Wheeler, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Garrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Roach, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Woods, how do you vote?
Aye.
I too vote aye. The motion carries by a vote of 6-0. On to our next, second business action item, Dr. Thacker.
Thank you, President Riley, Board of Trustees. In preparation for the 2021 building improvement projects, the district requires certain professional services. Tonight, Mr. Hawkins is going to have an action item to present to assist us in moving forward with the building improvement projects for 2021. Mr. Hawkins?
Thank you again, Dr. Thacker, President Riley, and members of the board. We do have a bit of a history with working with Sender and Company. Carl Sender worked for us a few years back. And one of the things that we like to see happen is a fiscal advisor, financial advisor who can see different things of things and make sure we're pointed in the right direction. So tonight we're recommending the services of Sender and Company to assist us as we move forward with this bond and other financial issues or items that come up throughout the year. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Board members, any questions or comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the letters of engagement for professional service with Sender and Company to serve as financial advisor in the amount of $4,000 to $5,000 for financial advisor fees and $35,000 to $45,000 for lease rental financing fees as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Wheeler, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Garrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Roach, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Woods, how do you vote?
Aye.
I too vote aye. Motion carries by a vote of 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you.
Let's see, we'll move on to our next operation business report. Dr. Thacker.
Thank you, President Riley, Board of Trustees. The Department of Local Government Finance has certified the district's 2021 budget. Executive Director of Business Services, Jerry Hawkins, will present a brief report reviewing the 2021 budget order. Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you again, Dr. Thacker. You have before you a presentation, and I'll go through it fairly quickly. I'm always happy to answer questions. I could talk for hours about all of this because it is what I love, but I know you don't all enjoy it as much as I do. So I'll go quickly and interrupt or ask questions as we go. First thing, we're going to talk about the assessed valuation, what's happened over the last few years. We'll talk about the appropriations or the budget that has been approved. We're going to discuss the tax levy, property tax levy, and the property tax rate and look at some history along with that. So the first chart here shows the assessed valuation. And as you can see, the assessed value for 2021 went up by 6.02%. A very nice growth. This is the largest assessed value we have experienced. It has exceeded what was the high prior to the past recession. The next slide shows the same information only in a chart. Kind of gives you an idea historically of what we've seen. The 6%, I will say, was a larger increase than we were anticipating. Again, shows the quality of our tax base that we are working from. The next slide shows the appropriations for the education fund. And if you remember, the education fund has only been around for 3 years. And so it's, we don't really have a history to do a lot of comparisons yet, but you can see the changes of the education fund over the last 3 years. We did see a slight decrease in 2021 of the actual budget, largely due to, well, a variety of reasons. One is a slight reduction in enrollment, which reduced revenue, and a few other factors that play a part there. The next slide shows the taxable funds, which two funds are the debt service fund and operation fund. It shows a comparison of 2020 to 2021. It shows what those changes are. for the actual budget. This is the budget that was approved by the DLGF. The next slide shows a little bit more of a history of the taxable fund. So if you remember previous years, we had a severance debt and we had a exempt debt and we had a variety of things. But this summarizes or totals all of those different funds that created a levy and adds them up and does a comparison since 2012. You can kind of see that our levy, or our, excuse me, not levy, our appropriations does a comparison of what they have done over the previous years. We saw the budget then was able to increase by 6.94%. The next slide shows our actual levy. So this is how much we're collecting, or we would hope to collect from taxpayers prior to tax cap. So if we saw 100% collection, this is what we would see. Now we know we won't see 100% collection, but it does do a fair comparison of what our levy would be doing for 2021. You can see the comparisons. This then does the same, goes back to 2012 and does a comparison year over year. And you can see that we are growing a bit, but because of the growth of our assessed value, you'll find that our tax rate has not changed significantly. So that's the levy. Now here we talk about tax rates, which is really the biggest factor that impacts our taxpayers is what is the rate doing and how is that impacting their taxes. So you can see we did see a slight increase in the tax rate, but not significant. We still have a very, very low tax rate, and you'll see that here in a second. This shows the history over the last number of years, and the highest in recent years was in 2014 of $1.23, and we are at 92 cents. So you can see we are still significantly below what the tax rate was in 2014. In fact, 25% below what it was then. So I think you have a lot to be proud of when you look at tax rates. This one is always a nice chart. Well, it's a nice chart to show for a comparison where I took all tax rates for schools in the two counties, St. Joe and Elkhart County, and did a comparison of what their 2021 tax rates are. And you'll see we are the lowest tax rate of any school district in these two counties. And you'll see most of those on the higher end. The other impact of this is they passed referendums. So not only is it a high tax rate, but it's some of their tax rate is above tax caps, which means their tax cap impact may not be as large, so they're collecting larger amounts. So it is a significant difference when you consider our tax rate at 92 cents versus what some of these other districts are collecting on a rate. It's not fair to take their rate with our assessed value, but we would be collecting a significant amount more of money if we had a tax rate closer to what they are, what their tax rates are. So in summary, and this is a quick summary, basically we will continue to use our GOBs and leases, and we'll talk about that here coming up, for our building improvements and common school fund loans for our technology needs. The assessed value increased by 6%, a little over. Levy increased by 7.9%. Tax rate increased by only 1.58%. And a reminder that we have the lowest tax rate in the area. So that's a real quick synopsis of what our budget looks like going forward and some of the information with it. Are there any questions?
Board members, questions or comments?
Well, the one question is the increase in assessed value. Now, is that, I know that the formula they've raised the assessed value of a lot of property. So is this increase coming because of that, or is it coming on behalf of new construction?
Well, I'd have to do a little bit of research to be exact, but I can tell you that my experience and my discussions would say that the majority is coming from the reassessments as property values are going up. There certainly is some new construction, but we haven't seen much growth, certainly not in homes growth in our area. to create a significant change in our assessed value. We can do a little bit more research and see if we can't find out some more of that information if you'd like.
Well, thank you for your answer.
Larry, what impact do you think the AV has on the overall educational funding formula? None, right?
None.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because I want to make sure I understood you.
Yeah, it has none on
That
that.
increase in AV doesn't help us like it would have 16 years ago when I first got on the school board, right? So, because it's all.
But it helps us with what he's covered.
I agree with that, but it would have had the impact of the increase in AV would have helped us out a lot more and our taxpayers out a lot more if the educational funding, which is most of what we spend our dollars on, came from property taxes and not from state funding, right? Do you agree with that?
It's how they figured it.
Okay. Mr. Hawkins, do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I think the one thing that they did was when they took the property tax portion out of the general fund, in other words, removed that as a funding source for general fund, they increased the sales tax. So that was designed to be I guess, a way to say a use tax in a sense, and to more fairly tax the constituents of our community. Whether you look at it that way or not, I'm not trying to judge that, but if you think sales tax is a fairer way to collect revenue than property tax, then I would say it was probably a good move. But you're right, when assessed value goes up, we don't see that advantage in our general, or in this case, education fund like we used to. But the same could be said the other way. When the assessed value was going down, and it did from 2008, number of years there before it recovered. So during that time, it was, could have been more impactful on the education fund if that was the case, if it was going down as well. So I guess it's a little bit of a perspective of how you look at it.
Thank you, sir.
Other questions or comments? Well, again, Mr. Hawkins, thank you for your work and your input. I would invite you not to go very far.
I'm right here, ready and waiting.
We'll move on to our second business operational services report for the evening, Dr. Thacker.
Thank you, President Riley, Board of Trustees. Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Alinsky, will make a presentation on the administration's proposed recommendation for the 2021 capital improvements for PHM facilities. Following Mr. Alinsky's presentation, Mr. Hawkins will ask the board to authorize the advertisement of the notice of hearing on projects and preliminary determination hearing. Mr. Alinsky?
Thank you, Dr. Thacker. Good evening, President Riley, members of the board. Before we get to my presentation, we're going to ask that Carl Sender update you on a summary of our tax rates and our bond capacity so that when I present the projects, you'll know that we can truly afford them. So I'll turn this over to Mr. Sender.
Good evening, President Riley, members of the board, Dr. Thatcher. Thank you for having me here tonight. Before you have a few slides, I'll just quickly go through to summarize where our debt limit capacities are, tax rates with our current debt, and what would happen if we were to issue some new debt for some new projects. So the first slide here is our constitutional debt limit. For regular general obligation bonds, we have a present limitation. We can issue up to $20,425,000. We presently have outstanding of our general obligation bonds of $10,055,000. So we have available $10,370,000 that you could do in the future of other general obligation bonds. I should note that you've issued other multi-school district first mortgage bonds. Those are considered outside of the constitutional debt limit. So this is just, the next slide here is an overview of the school's debt in comparison to what both the levy is as well as the tax rate. And as you see, it's starting to decline, meaning that you have bonds that are rapidly amortizing, being paid off. And so you have opportunity to issue new debt really without increasing. We can structure the bonds, the new bonds, so that you kind of stay at the existing levy, existing rates to get some projects done. The concern is if with this declining amount of debt and the rate starts to decline over time, that if you wait too long and then you issue debt, then it appears to be a really large tax rate increase. This slide here is just a quick overview. I think Mr. Hawkins did a great job of summarizing. We went back to 2016 with this best value showing the 6.2. In some of our projections that you'll see with debt service, we assume that you would have a 3% net assessed value growth and that your levies for your operations fund would increase at least 3.5% for the next several years. And so here we have your a list of the tax rates here. This slide's just of your circuit breaker credits, as you all know, with the 1%, 2%, 3% tax caps limits the amount that what schools collect. Right now for 2020, you're at 2.1 million. For the operations fund, total is still roughly the same. It hasn't gone up dramatically, although it did go up a little bit from 19 to 20. But as your assessed value does increase, the circuit breaker credits should go down unless other units are increasing their levies. And I don't believe the 2021 amounts are released yet. So one of the things that I believe Mr. Hawkins has discussed with you a little bit, if we were to issue another first mortgage bonds here in the amount of approximately $16.7 million this year, we could start filling up those buckets, the bars that are colored in yellow, so that we try to keep our tax tax rate the same as what it is in 2021. And we can size it accordingly as we go into the future here. But this would be about a 15-year bond issue. And we've left some room open so that if in the next year or two that there are additional projects that I think you're going to be discussing tonight, that those can be done also in the next several years as well. So with that, I'm happy to, and then this is just the total tax rate again for 19, 20, and 21, projected still in this 90 to 92 cent range. So you're still under what your all-time high of around $1 or $1.10 has been. And so your tax rates are very stable. And as Mr. Hawkins said, the lowest in the state or in this area in northern Indiana. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Board members, any questions?
Well, one thing, it shows on your, that in 2022, the new debt is considerably higher than the following years. What is that attributed to?
You know, on the overview of the tax rates, I think that we had accidentally put in there what the increase would be for the new bond issue, and we should have left it historical, showing that it would really been 76, not the 95 cents. But when we do the final sizing, we will make sure that it doesn't exceed, you know, your present rate of 92 cents.
Thank you. Mr. Linsky?
Get the presentation pulled up. Thank you. This evening, the administration, following that presentation, is requesting approval of our 2021 capital improvements. Improvements are being recommended for all PHM facilities and were created around the framework of the 2015 Schmidt study. A team of administrators, including the facilities director of safety and security, executive director of business, myself, utilized that Schmidt study from 2015, principals meetings, teacher feedback, to create this scope. Scope was work was reviewed and prioritized based on safety and security, learning environment needs, replacement cycles, and the goal of improving all of our overall facilities. Again, these will be financed through a lease rental, at least that's what we are proposing. Just a quick review, assessment of needs for the 2015 Schmidt study showed $32 million worth of projects for a 5-year plan. Slowly but surely, we've been chipping away at all of that. based on our debt capacity. Again, they collected principal feedback, teacher, student, and parent feedback in the facilities department. I already repeated what the determination of priorities didn't change. I do want to just make sure that everyone understands we have 1.9 million square foot of interior space, so there's a lot of improvements that we can make on a consistent basis. We also have 500 plus acres of property that we take care of and manage. The average year built is 1974. So depending on what year your house is, think about the projects you're doing at home. We're doing those same things, just in many, many more bathrooms. Average year since a major renovation is 25 years, and I tell you this every year, it's an asterisk. We've changed how we renovate buildings. We don't close the entire building down and renovate the whole thing. We're kind of in that constant replacement cycle. People say we like to watch HGTV too much. District covers 135 square miles. So if you want to get up tomorrow and help me evaluate roads, just stay after the meeting and I'll make sure I take your number. We'll talk at 2 a.m. Just facilities at a glance. I try to make sure you're very informed on what every space looks like, what the square footage is, what year built, year it was renovated, how many years since renovation, what the ADM looks like, what the square footage is per child, and what the site space looks like overall. And we use that to calculate some equity, and I'll get to that. We talk about that equity and balance and how I'm proposing spending the dollars. This year, and every year it's a little different depending on the needs, our elementary schools are going to see nearly 39% of that overall funding. Again, there's 11 elementaries, so you'd expect to spend more money there. Middle schools at nearly 22, high school 20%. District is split across the entire district, but we label it as district. That's 15%, and then support facilities, transportation, SSC, some of those areas that support operations at 5%. I break it down by level, so you can see what it costs per child. What it, I'll also do this by square footage, and I'll end it that way, so you can see what the improvement does per building, and that's again based on their ADM. It just shows, sorry, too many clicks. It shows that roughly 40% of the dollars are being spent on elementary students, 21% on middle school students, and 20% on the high school. We break this down two different ways in terms of priorities. These are how they're basically identified: district initiatives, facilities and maintenance, principal identified needs, safety and security, and then the Schmidt study. And they correlate to those various colors. We also break it down by the type. So it's aesthetics, things that make things look better, need to be updated. We look at air quality, which is, again, very important as we look at COVID and the changes we're making. It also impacts our ability for energy management and energy savings. We look at annual things that we just have to continually take care of. We look at energy savings specific projects and safety specific projects, and then service, things that service us. You can see it's the biggest category because we're in the people business. We're taking care of our students, we're taking care of our staff. I've got a full breakdown. I'd like to read through each of these lines with you tonight.
You're welcome to. Please be advised, the board has
that.
already done so.
We won't do that. I would like to just indicate, I'll just take the largest projects as to what you can expect. Grissom Middle School is going to have a brand new roof put on it. That's a very large school. That is actually the biggest project by budget. The second largest, we're going to be doing a project at Mary Frank, similar to what we did at Walt Disney, upgrading that exterior shell. It's failing. And that will prepare that building for the next 50 years. Again, there's 233 more projects there. I'd be happy to stay afterwards and talk to you about every single one of them. But certainly if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. So all of those are listed for you by school, and they're also categorized. There's a whole lot of them. We talk about by the number. So again, I shared with you that I'd be sharing this by square footage and what that would look like. You can see that the most costly is that the elementary buildings, and again, they're the smallest buildings when you think about size, so it's more expensive. The middle schools become a little cheaper, and the high school, being the largest building, becomes the most efficient cost center. And then again, our support services are more expensive because they're smaller buildings. I like this. You can't see it very well on that, but hopefully you can see it on your computer. This is called a starburst, and it kind of takes both of those categories, how they're identified and the type of project it is, and it organizes it so you can see what we're doing in each different category of service. You can break that down and see what those percentages look like and what those dollars look like. And this is in an effort to be as transparent as possible with the board and the community and how your dollars are benefiting all of these cost centers. So just to wrap it up, our 2021 improvement plan does not raise taxes. That is the goal every year. This is not being paid out of the education fund. That's the location of teacher compensation. This improves our learning environment for our students. It improves our working conditions for employees. It improves the service to the community, and it's aligned with our previous facility assessment and taking into consideration all of the input from stakeholders. And we'll continue to do that. In fact, I'll be bringing you hopefully next fall a recommendation to do another facility assessment to follow up on the previous one and take a look at everything that we've done. And trust me, I've got a whole laundry list, more than 235 to keep this district in shape and fully functional for many years to come. Questions?
Questions? Mr. Hawkins.
Yes,
Oh,
we
thank you
are
very much.
ready for the next item.
We are ready.
All right. We just are asking for permission to advertise a notice of hearing for the lease financing and for building improvements. So we take that to you at this time.
Okay. So a motion, do I have a motion authorizing the advertisement of the notice of hearing on projects, preliminary determination of hearing as presented?
So moved.
Second. Mr. Beeler, how do you vote? Aye. Mrs. Gates, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Garrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Roach, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Woods, how do you vote? I do vote aye. Motion carries by a vote of 6-0. The board will hold a public hearing on the project's preliminary determination hearing at the February 22nd, 2021 regular meeting. Meanwhile, thank you, Dr. Thacker. Thank you most especially, Mr. Linsky and Mr. Hawkins. Mr. Hawkins, it is always good to see you again. Thank you so much for joining us and for providing us the information. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is board reports and requests. Board members, do you have anything to report or request? Hearing none, we'll move on to the hearing of visitors. Is there anyone in attendance this evening who has not already addressed the board who would like to do so? Seeing none, then we'll move on to announcements. Next regular meeting of the Penn-Harris-Madison Board of School Trustees will convene Monday, February the 8th, 2021 at 7 p.m. at the Educational Services Center here in Mishawaka, Indiana. Next item on the agenda is the adjournment of the meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
I so move.
Second.
I thought that adjournment was going to die for lack of a second. I will recognize Mr. Peeler with the motion.
Want to go home?
I'll recognize Ms. Roche with the second. Mr. Beeler, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Garrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Roach, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Woods, how do you vote? I too vote aye. Meeting is adjourned at 9:46 p.m.